September 1939. The world holds its breath. Germany has just invaded Poland, and France, bound by a treaty, declares war. The French army mobilizes, crosses the German border into the Saar region, and then nothing. No great offensive. No surge toward Berlin. Just silence. Why? This is not just a footnote in World War II. It's a decision that changed the course of history. France had the opportunity to hit Germany when its western defenses were practically empty. Hitler gambled, and France flinched. In those critical days, the future of Europe could have shifted dramatically. What stopped France? Was it fear, strategy, political caution, or something deeper? A nation still haunted by the horrors of the Great War, paralyzed at the edge of action. This is the story of the invasion that was not, and the consequences that echoed for generations. The 1st of September, 1939, ignited the powder keg. Nazi Germany invaded Poland with speed and brutality, deploying the full force of its blitzkrieg tactics. Within days, the world was watching in disbelief as Polish cities crumbled under relentless assault. France and Britain, allies of Poland, were obligated to respond. On September 3rd, both declared war on Germany. The people of Europe expected a swift, retaliatory strike. Instead, a strange pause settled over the Western Front, a silence that would soon be known as the Phoney War. In Paris, the streets were tense but calm. Its troops were mobilizing. The government made public assurances, and the world expected France, with the most powerful army in Western Europe, to charge. But behind closed doors, French generals hesitated, haunted by memories from 2 decades prior. France's military obligation to Poland was not just moral. It was codified in treaties. The Franco-Polish military alliance of 1921 promised coordinated action in the event of German aggression. It was time for France to keep its word. As German tanks raced eastward, Poland desperately waited for relief. French forces slowly prepared for an offensive known as the Saar Offensive. The idea was simple: pressure Germany in the west to divide their forces and ease the pressure on Poland. But the French response was sluggish. Days passed and Poland's cries grew louder. Still, France inched forward, cautiously. A nation once bleeding from Verdun seemed unwilling to bleed again, not without absolute certainty. On September 7th, the French finally moved. 11 divisions advanced into the Saar region of Western Germany, covering about 8 kilometers and occupying several lightly defended villages. Resistance was minimal. Germany had left the West nearly undefended. The French could have pushed further, even reached the Rhine, but instead they fortified positions and waited. No air raids, no armored thrusts, just a slow crawl followed by a strategic halt on September 12th. Commanders claimed poor terrain and coordination issues, but the truth was more psychological than tactical. Despite numerical superiority, France did not trust itself to carry the war forward. The Saar Offensive became symbolic, a gesture, not a strategy. The ghosts of World War I stalked every French decision in 1939, over 1.3 million. French soldiers had died in the trenches just 2 decades earlier. That trauma left a mark on French doctrine, leadership, and public opinion. Military leaders like General Gamelin were trained in a world of defense, not rapid offense. They saw war as a slow grind, not a lightning strike. The bloodshed of Verdun and the Marne still loomed large in their collective psyche. This generational scar made bold decisions difficult. France was willing to defend, but not to gamble. The idea of pushing deep into Germany awakened to many dark memories, and that fear became policy. The Maginot Line was not just concrete and steel, it was an ideology. Built in the 1930s, it represented France's belief in static defense. While impressive in engineering, it fostered strategic rigidity. Military planners felt safe behind the line, believing it would buy time in any conflict. But the line did not cover the Ardennes, a fact the Germans would later exploit. More importantly, it made French leaders think less about striking first and more about waiting. This defensive mindset shaped the response to Hitler's aggression. Even with the enemy exposed, French doctrine focused on holding ground, not gaining it. In 1939, the Maginot Line protected France, but it also imprisoned its strategy. When France advanced in the Saar, the German defenses were barely present. Hitler had concentrated 90% of his forces in the east, leaving only a handful of divisions to guard the west. It was a calculated risk. Had France pushed, they might have broken through. The road to the Rhine lay nearly open. German commanders admitted post-war that a serious French attack would have forced a full retreat. But the moment passed. The French pause allowed Germany to focus on destroying Poland without fear of a two-front war. Hitler gambled 8-1. France in 1939 was politically fractured. The Third Republic was fragile, with unstable governments and deep ideological divides between right, left, and center. Prime Minister Édouard Daladier faced pressure from all sides. There was no political appetite for a drawn-out conflict. Leaders feared public backlash if French troops began dying in large numbers. The pain of World War I had made France war-weary before the first shot. Even within the military, there was no consensus. Caution dominated. Decision-making stalled in bureaucracy and fear. While Poland burned, France wavered in its halls of power. While France was stronger on the ground, Britain was its key ally. The French hesitated to act decisively without full British coordination. But in early September, the British Expeditionary Force was still mobilizing. French commanders waited for British air and artillery support. London urged caution, not confrontation. Churchill, still not Prime Minister, was one of the few voices pushing for bold action. This allied indecision slowed momentum. France did not want to act alone. In trying to preserve unity, they preserved inaction. Military historians call it one of the greatest missed opportunities of the war. France had the numbers, the terrain advantage, and a weak enemy in front of them, yet they stopped. Had they pushed further, they might have reached the Rhine, possibly forcing Hitler into a retreat or negotiation. Poland might have survived longer. The entire trajectory of World War II could have changed. Instead, France waited. Germany regrouped. The momentum shifted, and history was written in retreat. While France held position in the West, Poland fought alone. German forces crushed resistance, city by city. By late September, Warsaw fell, and the Soviet Union invaded from the east. Poland was abandoned. The alliance that promised support had faltered. The Saar Offensive, meant to relieve pressure, had no effect on German strategy. To the Poles, it was betrayal. To the Germans, it was confirmation. The West would not act. Hitler's confidence grew, and so did his ambitions. From late 1939 to early 1940, the Western Front fell into silence. No major offensives occurred. Soldiers waited. Supplies were stockpiled. Morale was low. This period became known as the Phoney War. It was not peace, but it was not war either. France believed it had time to prepare. Germany, however, was planning something different. Behind the scenes, Hitler readied his real invasion plan, not through the Maginot Line, but around it, through Belgium and the Ardennes. In May 1940, the German blitzkrieg swept through Belgium, Luxembourg, and the Ardennes. The Maginot Line was bypassed entirely. France's worst fear became reality. In just 6 weeks, France collapsed. Paris fell. The government fled. The German flag flew from the Eiffel Tower. All of it began with hesitation, a failure to act when it mattered most. The Saar Offensive was now a distant memory, a moment of bravery drowned in a tide of what-ifs. Modern scholars remain divided. Some say France could not have acted faster, that logistics and political division made true action impossible. Others argue it was a fatal error of caution. There's agreement on one point. Germany's western defenses in September 1939 were incredibly weak. France had a window, however brief, to strike a blow that might have changed the war. But history is not written in might-haves. It's shaped by choices made and opportunities missed. What if France had pushed into the heart of Germany? What if the war ended before it truly began? The Holocaust, Dunkirk, the Battle of Britain, none of it may have happened. It's one of history's great sliding doors. A different choice in 1939 might have saved millions of lives, preserved nations, and prevented decades of destruction. But the opportunity passed. France turned back, and the war rolled forward, unstopped. The Saar Offensive teaches more than military history. It's about fear, caution, leadership, and the cost of inaction. Sometimes the greatest risk is not taking one. France had strength, allies, and a window of time. What it lacked was unity, vision, and boldness. And in war, those are the first casualties of hesitation. The Saar region remained quiet, but its silence echoes through every corner of World War II. History is not always shaped by battles fought, but by the ones avoided. France stood at the gates of a weakened enemy and chose stillness over storm. That decision changed everything. Would you have ordered the advance? Should France have struck? Was the fear of another World War I simply too great to ignore? Tell us in the comments. Subscribe for more long-form history told in full with the complexity and depth it deserves. And always remember, the past is not past. It's the foundation of everything we stand on today.